So, once again, hi everybody, my name is Chris. Thank you Source Labs for having me here. Again, it's a pleasure to meet all of you. I think I brought a very interesting topic, at least it is for me. I called it here Testing Conversational AI with the subtitle The Rise of the Bot. For me, it's the most interesting topic. Apart from that, it's the one topic that is right now driving information technology like no other topic. And I would like to start old school with an who am I. So on this slide there is one important thing, and that is that I'm a very famous, well-skilled drummer in Vienna. And I tried to prove it with this picture. Unfortunately, I think you can't see it too good. But if you take something very serious from this presentation, then take this, I'm a drummer. Apart from that, I'm the founder of Botium. I did the product placement here also. I'm chapter lead for testing at Raiffeisen Banking International in Vienna also. Keynote speaker, organizer of community events. And if you would like to stay in contact with me, if you have questions, whatever, give me a mail, Google my name. You will find me everywhere on GitHub, Bitbucket, and so on. So now you know pretty much all about my life, and I would like to get to know a little bit of you. Don't be afraid, you don't have to do a lot of things. I just want you to raise your hand. Who has heard about conversational AI? Who is working with bots, developing them, testing? Someone, somehow? Cool, it's more or less greenfield for me. So I would like to start with some kind of introduction, and the first thing I would like to talk about is disruption, because it's so great that we are living right now exactly in a moment where disruption is happening. Yeah? So we see every year a lot of innovations in information technology, but disruption only happens around about every 10 years. Yeah? And by disruption, I mean a new technology, a new product, a strategy of developing and doing things that completely replaces something that was before. And this is happening right now. And to give you more background, I have done this slide with the last 30 years. And if you go back, I have put here in 1988, more or less the personal computer was moving into private households. For the tech nerds, I know that IBM announced the first time a real personal computer in 1983, but it took some time till it went into the private households. And then 10 years later, we saw more or less the internet, or more or less web browsers, to become universal operating systems. So we started to go away from developing applications for Microsoft Windows or Mac OS X or something, to the point where we develop software for browsers, yeah, meaning web applications. And then 10 years later, maybe I see we are all around about in the same 10 years in our age. This is something we all can understand. Steve Jobs announced the iPhone, and the smartphone wave was rolling over the whole market, and it's a great example because it replaced what was there before. And since last year, the new big disruption is conversational AI, meaning chatbots, virtual assistants, and all the things connected to it, meaning artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and so on. Tomorrow I'll be again at Source Labs. Maybe I get a job offer after doing so much talks for them. Tomorrow I will give some insights about our test strategies at Raiffeisen Banking International, and as it is a bank, I also brought today an example of how conversational AI could work in a banking environment. Yeah? And this is a short video. Hopefully the sound is not too loud. I don't know if you have worked together with banks. I did it in the last 10 years at least, and all the things that you will see here usually take 2 weeks. So connecting your user data to an online banking, to a core banking system is done like that. Yeah, takes in Vienna with a traditional bank 1 week. Or changing your personal data, like your home address or something, you have to go into a branch, fill out papers until you see it in online banking again. It takes a week. And there are a few examples. The video is around about 1 minute. Think about how long this will take in your branch, in your bank you are using. By the way, I call this video or this slide, "The future of banking has the face of a robot." After we did so much for sound, Jörg, there's no sound in the video. No, somehow the beamer doesn't want to play sound. Maybe here? No. But let's say I planned it like that because now I can comment what's happening. Yeah, changing contact details in 1 second without going into a branch. Yeah? What's the next example? Retail banking. What were my last 5 transactions? Yeah, instead of logging into your online banking, using a ton to authenticate or whatever, you just ask your conversational AI and the data is there immediately because you are authenticated on your smartphone. Oh, there was such great sound. I could tell you it's played by my band. Pardon? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's crazy things changing P2P money transfer. I think the guy is doing it to his sister or something in seconds. Again, in Vienna, maybe the banks here are more modern, but in Vienna I have to go into a branch and do these things. And here it just takes seconds. Sure. Pardon, I didn't get it. Yeah, so this example is from America. Laws are different there. Here in Europe, of course, due to GDPR reasons, this would be immediately masked. But it's a great question because this company has GDPR testing also included. And I didn't want to talk about this because what I not want to do is a sales presentation here. I mean, having 50,000 users with our test framework, showing you another one wouldn't be a good idea, so I will show you ours, but I don't want to do a sales presentation, and therefore I wouldn't have talked about GDPR, but as you are asking it, you can take more or less every conversational AI out there, every chatbot, and ask something like, what are you doing with my data? Yeah? If you find one that gives you a sufficient answer, call me, because I haven't. So they are all violating GDPR. So we have heard this great music of my band. And this is more or less bringing us up to the first bigger chapter, which I called Game Changer Conversational AI. And this is why conversational AI is really driving information technology right now. So everything begins with number of users. And this is something that no board member, no strategy department or so on will oversee. So bots are usually living in a native application, in a mobile app, on a website, or on a social messenger. And if you take the 3 biggest ones, WhatsApp, Facebook, and WeChat, you have around about 3.8 billion unique clients. Compared to the world population, which is I think right now around about 7.7 billion, this is half of the world population. This is why every marketing department wants to have a chatbot, and this is why more or less every big enterprise company is working on one. And if you go one step further and take into consideration also the smaller players like Skype, you can even reach close to 60% of the world population with one conversational UI that you put on a few user interfaces. Coming to some numbers. So these numbers are not out of my brain. I didn't invent this. These numbers are from the big ID trend analysts out there. You know them all. It's more or less all quotes. If you take this, Google it, you will find the resource. I couldn't put them all here because the slide would have been crapped. But they are saying things like chatbots are the new apps, and they will kill more or less 99% of all what is out there. By 2020, we are expecting over 80% of all businesses working on a chatbot implementation or having already something implemented. Also, by 2020, chatbots will power around about 85% of all customer service interactions. I can approve this totally. More or less all of our big customers using the Botium framework can answer around about 85% of all their customer support requests with their chatbot. By 2021, and this is the number where all the boards are getting big ears, the human wage cost that you can save around about 262 billion US dollars, and this is just the beginning. If you think back on the slide with 2008 and the iPhone or the smartphone wave rising, this was not the moment where you could make most of the business out of it. This came 1 or 2 years later when the Apple Store or the App Store in general, together with Android, began to rise. There is the big business. So this is all very impressive. Here's a lot of light. This is Yoda, by the way, for these guys who can't see it. This is very, very impressive, these numbers. And if you combine this with these facts that all these big global players out there, like IBM and Microsoft and Google, are providing us AI engines, NLP, NLU engines, providing us frameworks to develop some kind of conversational AI in a few days, it's even more impressive. But the thing that we every day see is something like that, yeah. So these are free chatbots of very big companies. Yeah, we have here the Discovery Channel weather bot, the official chatbot of the Dallas Mavericks, and the chatbot of Gant Daily. Yeah, and if you take this for every request the user sends, it's always thanks for reading Chance. This is off the newsroom, and the user is getting mad. Yeah, I mean I would have stopped here at the second time, but the user tries and tries and tries again. Yeah, or if you take the Dallas Mavericks. When is the next game? Sorry, I don't quite understand, and so on. Yeah, so it's a what the fuck, and is it too confidential? No, I can tell you because I won't tell you what the airline is. But last week I was booking the flight from Vienna to Berlin here, and I went to my usual airline, and I was very curious because they have replaced the ticket booking system with conversational AI, and I was like, hey, this is cool. Now I don't have to go there, start again with my passport number and fill out 10 pages. This will take now 1 minute, yeah? And I opened this thing and I said, I want to book a flight, please. And he said, sorry, I don't understand. Again, it's a flight ticket booking bot. Okay, I said, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, so my girlfriend always said I'm wrong, my ex-girlfriend. So I changed to, I would like to buy a ticket. Sorry, I don't understand. I tried it again. I would like to fly from Vienna to Berlin. Guess what? Sorry, I don't understand. Yeah? So this was 2 years ago, the moment where Florian, which is my tech lead and co-founder of Botium, we were sitting there and we were like, what the fuck? Why? What's going on here? Yeah, there is all this technology, there is this enormous market behind, there are skilled tech guys out there. What's happening there? Or to be more serious, we asked ourselves, why does conversational AI fail? Partially, there are a lot of reasons. Yeah. So first of all, artificial intelligence is still not that accessible, and as a reason of that, a lot of bots are still decision tree based, and they are just crap. Yeah. I mean, they are disappearing more and more, but a lot of them are still there. What does it mean? It's not that accessible. If you want to go for an enterprise player like IBM Watson, you have to pay enterprise money for it. Yeah, so for a small company with a few employees, this is probably not possible. Use cases are still not strong enough. This means more or less that the industry needs to learn out of failures. Yeah? A lot of bots lack in transparency, so setting up the right expectations is very important. For example, if your bot fails, if I get a sorry, I don't understand, it would be good to know it's a chatbot, it's not well trained, and this is the reason why it failed. The interesting thing is that our customers are going here completely in a different direction. What they are doing is something called humanification. So they are trying to make their bot feeling like a human being. Yeah? And a good example is we have a big telecom customer, and this customer gets around about, I think, 300,000 support requests per month, and 260,000 of them, and this is exactly the 85% we had before that can be answered by the bot, you can resolve down to 5 intents, more or less. Yeah? So if this bot is able to answer very stable these 5 intents, you can answer 260,000 or 300,000 support requests. And these top 5 intents are: how can I quit my contract? Is the new iPhone available? How big is my data limit? So very clear if you see them. And I wanted to talk about humanification. The cool thing is, you could ask, how can I quit my contract? And you could get the answer like this in 1 second. But they are not doing this because a customer support employee wouldn't do this. Instead, this bot is called Troy. You see something like, oh, Troy is thinking, Troy is searching for the solution. Then you see Troy is typing for 10 or 15 seconds. So at the end, you have the feeling there's really someone sitting there called Troy. So this is going into the opposite of setting up the right expectations for human being. By the way, a great challenge to test humanification. Bots don't understand context. Again, I have to talk about my ex-girlfriend, because with context, this reading in between the lines. I'm very bad in this, but usually human beings are very good in this, at least compared to a machine. Yeah, so bots are bad in reading in between the lines. And there is a second thing when we're talking about context. Context is also for bots about remembering what was said before. Yeah? So if I ask a weather bot, how is the weather in Berlin? He would tell me something like, I don't know, 9 degrees and it's raining. And if my next question is, and tomorrow? If the bot doesn't know context, he will say, sorry, I don't understand. If he has context, if he remembers the conversation from before, he will tell you tomorrow it is. Maybe also not so good. And then things are getting tricky there, yeah? Because how long do you remember this? For 10 minutes, till tomorrow, for 6 months? So it's an interesting topic. Bots still try to handle too many things at once. It's pretty clear. And there is a lack in proper human escalation protocols. So at the end, a well-tested, trained bot, a right setup should never end up in, sorry, I don't understand. If the bot is not able to answer your question, it should do a handover to a human being, meaning a real support employee, for example. So let's come back. These are all partial reasons. None of this reason is the real reason for my airline not being able to answer, I want to book a flight, please. Yeah? There's one main reason. There's a tremendous lack in testing and training and doing quality assurance for conversational AI. This is software, and software needs to be tested. So it's just crazy, and we started to dive deeper 2 years ago. And if you look on Google or DuckDuck or wherever you search for chatbot landscape or AI landscape or bot ecosystems, you find really nice done graphical representations. This one is from O'Reilly, so it's here. Telling you about AI engines, on which messaging platforms they will work, and which even natural language processing as a service you can use, and bot frameworks to develop and deploy and so on. And there are bigger graphics where you find 200 icons of companies and tools. But guess what? I compared more than 100 graphics on none. Again, on none of all the graphics, there was one single tool or one word about testing or training. And everyone who has studied in the area of AI or done some online courses or whatever, everyone knows training and testing is the main fact of AI. So in future, for the developers here, yeah, my personal opinion, but we won't develop like we do it right now. Yeah? So imagine in 2 years Germany is a car manufacturer country, yeah. You're standing with your autonomous driving car and it stops in front of a traffic light. Do you expect that someone codes there, if light is red, stop, if it's yellow, prepare to drive again, if it's green, let's drive? No, there is AI and it will be trained to stop at red and start at green and so on, yeah. And therefore, it's completely weird why no one thought about testing and training, because there are, I think, 100 frameworks to develop a bot. And this is the weird thing. With an online tutorial and one of these cool frameworks, you can develop one of these bots in 2 days. But the outcome will be, sorry, I don't understand. And to give you even more background, 2 years ago, and this was the starting point of Botium, we had a big customer. He had around about 300 interns and a few hundred user examples. If you multiply this, you get, let's say at the end, we had around about 100,000 conversations to test. And I started to ask the big global players out there, the famous big five, I can't say names because the camera is running, how would you test this? And after 2 weeks and asking 3 times again, how can you test this? How can you help us? They send us emails like, oh, we will send 24 people, 2 weeks, they will sit there and type it through the user interface. Yeah? And I was again, what? Really? And I told them, guys, the team working on the bot is doing in each sprint, they have weekly sprints, 1,000 deployments. So 1,000 times, or 1,000 builds to be honest, but if the build succeeds, we're doing an auto deployment on the first dev environment, first testing environment. So at least 1,000 times in a week, there should be a smoke test running for this bot. And if this test is green, we ship to a system test environment and add to the smoke test main testing, test suite, whatever, do functional testing. And if this succeeds, we ship to a system integration test environment and add security and performance testing. And if this succeeds, we ship to UAT and so on. Yeah? So at the end, if everything is good, we are running, I don't know, 50,000 tests a week, and you are telling me one test run takes 2 weeks with 25 people. So how should this fit together with continuous delivery in an agile environment, in a DevOps or even in a DevSecOps organization? This doesn't work. And this was exactly the moment when we began, again, product placement, when we began with Botium. So we said there must be some kind of testing tool. You have to automate this. In a DevOps organization, the most important thing that you need is fast feedback, and to have fast feedback, you need to automate. That's it. Yeah. This is how Botium began. And I'm so proud of these community quotes because it's so easy with them to explain what we are doing. So what is Botium? Quote of the community: it's the upcoming industry standard for testing and training conversational AI. So I'm fine with that. I'm not changing that. Second quote, and I like this even more, it's the Selenium for chatbots. Pretty cool one. And the third quote is coming from me to give it more technical concept or details. It's a fully integrated test automation infrastructure for developing conversational AI. In the meanwhile, so when these things came up, we really were only the Selenium for chatbots because there was this product which is called Botium Core, and it is, for someone who has done Selenium or Appium tests, it feels like home. Yeah, we have capabilities, you write your tests in the same way and so on, but you have to code, you have to set up these things, you have to investigate, you have to maintain, you have to do a lot of work. In the meanwhile, there's a product called Botium Box that takes over all the complicated stuff. I will do later on a very short live demo to give you an impression. So how does this thing work? I was sitting on this graphic, by the way, 2 days or something, and my designer said I could do this in 5 minutes. Yeah, the story of my life. So the beginning was here, Botium Core. Botium Core is the Selenium for chatbots. It's a test automation framework that fires things to your conversational AI and gets back a response. Yeah? Remember the me tag and the bot tag. I will come back to those later. And after this thing has reached 50,000 community users, and this is, I mean, it's my product, and of course I'm proud of it, but it's not a B2C product. Yeah? So my mother wouldn't download it. She doesn't need it. So having 50,000 users means, oh, it's really companies working on something like that. And there's always the question who is using it and so on. And as the camera is running, I'm giving the politically correct answer. Data privacy is the most important thing for us and so on. I won't say names. But if you want to get an impression, this thing is completely open source. Look into the pull request. Which companies are there and improving these things. So I'm coming from a small working family. I could never imagine that I'm working together with these global players one day. Yeah, coming back to this point, after this thing was really major, we listened. We listened to our customers, we listened to our community, and if you have 50,000 community users, you get a lot of emails every day. And the outcome was we need to create Botium Box. And Botium Box is more or less the nice user interface coming with a bunch of features that you can't implement with Botium Core itself. It's feeding the core with test data, getting back results, do the reporting and so on. Again, I will do a short live demo later. But please remember the me and the bot tag. So this is now completely decoupled from this Botium product. Also our logo is there. It's an important slide because I'm discussing this with a lot of customers again and again. What they want to do is start testing on system integration test level. Yeah? And this is not where you start on conversational AI. I can understand why, because they think, okay, if we don't test the earlier stages, when we go through the user interface, we are testing already the whole AI engine behind it and so on. But this is just wrong. So testing conversational AI starts on API layer, on API level, however you want to call it. This is the level where we can run 100,000 conversations against the AI engines of, I put here 5 players. There are hundreds out of there in the meanwhile. There's also a very cool one from, I don't know if they are sitting in Berlin, but they are from Germany, rather. On this layer, we can run 100,000 tests in a few seconds. If those tests succeed, you take a smaller subset, go on to the next level, do a system test against the user interface. Yeah? It makes no sense to run on the Facebook Messenger 100,000 conversations because you already approved that you get the right answer. It's just about testing that the button is in the right position and so on, and testing for fragmentation and so on. There, the Source Labs guys come into place, yeah, with their device cloud, and browser farm and so on. And if this succeeds, you shift to the next level, system integration test. This is also system integration test, but it looks more fancy to call it system test and system integration test. What I mean there is we're also including sound libraries. Yeah? So if you're, for example, developing an Alexa-based skill or something for the Google Home thing or Siri, Botium could also talk with this device, which is very cool, and I did this often on keynotes, put an Alexa here and let my computer talk with it. But the problem is people think it's cool, but they don't get the point that to a certain extent you are not testing your AI engine anymore, you are testing the speech recognition of Alexa, yeah? And you shouldn't do the work of Amazon, to be honest. But if you want to do full testing, you should also test on this level. So, coming to a few challenges, I guess a lot of you guys, as this is the continuous testing meetup, are testers. And before I do a live demo, I want to show you some challenges you have when you start testing conversational AI. So the first thing is defining your acceptance criteria. This is if you're developing a website, this is pretty easy. You have a user story, there's a new button. If I click on it, a link is opened. There are 2 acceptance criteria, it's pretty easy to test. When you come to conversational AI, things are different. Yeah? Example that could be pretty much the same from the basics is something like you say hi to the bot and you expect the bot to answer with hi. This would be the conversation flow. But there are scenarios where you say hi, you expect hi, the bot replies with hi, but the test case fails. And why does it fail? Because the NLU, NLP performance is not good. Yeah? And a typical case would be the bot resolved the intent correctly to the utterance, meaning he detected, I have to answer now with hi or something, but the confidence level was very low. Yeah? So more or less he did a best guess. So by accident, he got the right intent, gave the right answer, but for sure in future he will fail. So this is always very cool when I see our customers for the first time, they're like, oh, the bot said the right thing, but why is it failing? Yeah? And then you show them, look, the confidence is under a defined level, and then your test should fail. Then the next thing was 2 years ago, how do you map conversations in a test case, in a test set? That's not so easy, and In the FAQs, people are coming with the greatest examples, like if you define a conversation hi and expect also hi to get back, maybe the bot in the afternoon says good afternoon and so on. So there's variations, dynamic response and so on. So to cover all these things, covering things like rich text, a lot of bots offer you buttons to click, send you pictures and so on. We had to define a completely new data type that we called conversation files, where we could map conversations, a flow, and also NLU, NLP performance in some kind of test cases and test sets. Therefore, we have special syntax, special asserters. You can work with regular expressions, wildcards. Again, I'm coming back here to 50,000 community users. You can believe me, there is every day a new request, especially when those guys have developed their own conversational AI engine, then they need special asserters. This, by the way, is one of the open source repos that is used the most, or where we get the most pull requests. Asserters are there to check the response of the bot. The easiest example is I send text, I expect text. But you can do so much more. You can check, did the bot send me a hyperlink? If I open this hyperlink, do I get an HTTP 200 response? Does he send me pictures? There is an asserter to even connect to a database. We see customers, for example, testing their things like shopping carts. You add an article and the sum should be increased, and you check if it is the correct value that you also have in your database and so on. There are even asserters to check the poor JSON or HTTPS response that we get. So more or less the full transcript or all the intent data that we get. So it's way much more than just this easy example that you see here. And now I'm coming back to the moment when I said, please remember the me tag and the bot tag. You remember this nice graphic that my designer didn't really like? There was the me tag with the arrow going to the bot and the bot tag with the arrow coming back. And this is the concept of these conversation files. There is a me tag, so Botium will send this conversation to the conversational AI. And there's a bot tag. This is exactly what we are expecting back. And that's it. It's that easy. There are also already special asserters inside here, for example, an intent asserter and so on. You will see this later on in the live demo shortly. And of course, testers have to deal now with new concepts. There is now vocabulary like we're talking about intents, utterances, entities, about top mismatches, weak intents, all this stuff you have to get used to. And it doesn't stop, and I can tell you there's another slide with challenges. The coverage question. So all testers know this miracle of 100% test coverage doesn't exist. But coming to conversational AI, we are reaching a different level because you can ask about everything. And users are doing this. So we see the banking bot of one of our customers gets questions like, what is the weather in Vienna? So in my personal opinion, the banking bot does not have to give a correct answer here, but in no case he should say, sorry, I don't understand. Or even worse, and we are also seeing this, crash the system, or even worst, by crashing, showing the user confidential information in data. So this should not happen. And again, the problem is that these things are not tested correctly. We have to deal with natural language processing, natural language understanding. These are the new skills a tester has to have in future. Testing, training, and content management go hand in hand. So I see a lot of testers out there now doing also the content management, meaning changing the training data and so on for their conversational AI. One bot, multiple user interfaces. As you have seen before, if I cover just Facebook, WhatsApp, and WeChat, I can reach half of the world. So why should I do it just for one interface? Do it for all of them. Then there is the F word, and now it's not fuck, it's fragmentation. And this is where Source Labs is so strong. We had this problem before when we were testing browsers 20 years ago with Selenium. We had the problem test on the latest 10 IE Internet Explorer versions and Chrome versions and Firefox versions. Then all the app stuff came up, and I was there sitting with Appium. Oh my God, I have to test now on the latest 4 or 5 or 6 Android versions that are out there, on all major devices, on iOS, on different screen sizes with different resolutions and so on. So these things were already exploding, and now we are going on to the next level, having conversational AI running in an app on the Facebook Messenger and so on. And again, you have to test against all these different devices, operating systems, browsers, and so on. And the data sets, meaning the test sets, are infinitely big. Of course, we also have to understand things like conversation models, deal with linguistics, maths, statistics is a lot inside. Humanification testing, I was already talking about this, and context testing. By the way, I'm in the time. I should hurry up a little bit, but a nice story to humanification testing. We have a customer that wants their bot to be rude because it is human. So if a customer is doing a support call and is very rude, a real custom support employee would also be rude. Yeah? And we have found a solution to test this. It's great. Continuous security, so all the non-functional testing is also there. Continuous security, stress load performance, and so on. We have challenges like there are AI engines, when you shift their 100,000 tests in 1 minute, they lock your user. Yeah? So you have to find workarounds. Technology access is a big problem. To be honest, not a big problem. It's only WhatsApp that is restricting these things. Yeah, coming to a live demo. I have some minutes. Let's go out of here and show you the cool thing. So this is the dashboard of Botium Box. Yeah, there's some gray in between and so on. The beamer is very light, but it looks pretty cool. I want to do with you now something like a hello world. And now the Selenium and Appium guys, imagine the following situation. You have a new application. Let's take just one platform, an iOS application. On iOS, things are usually easier. You want to get to the point where you set up your test framework, meaning you have Appium there, you have some test runner, let's take TestNG or whatever. You are doing it on multiple devices, so you need multi-threading, let's code it in Java or something. You need some reporting also, you want nice PDF reports, so what do we include? Extend report or something, a library like that. And of course, we are DevOps organizations. We want to integrate this in our continuous delivery pipeline. So I have done this 15 years ago, setting up websites with Selenium and so on. Then I went to apps, and now I'm in love with this conversational AI. But in these enterprise companies I work, the things I just mentioned now, yeah, getting the firewall executions, the right proxy settings, and so on, coding the stuff around it. Of course, we use also a page object model, so the usual stuff. We have some nice clean code, did some pull requests, reviews, and so on. This took, in best case, something between 2 months and 1.5 years to set these things up. Yeah, this is just the truth. And especially when you come to the point where you want to integrate it in your pipeline, yeah, when you have to work with DevOps engineers and so on. And I call this Hello World. This was more than a Hello World. Yeah? I call this Hello World because now I want to show you a Hello World of testing conversational AI that includes all the things that I just mentioned. And I won't say a lot of things while doing it, just to show you how fast it could be done with Botium Box. Yeah? So there's a quick start menu. I select the bot, give it a name, say next, select the test set, select the test environment, click save and start testing. What happens in the background? Test automation is there, all the magic is the background is there, and out of the box test set was used. Botium agents in the background are now starting the tests. They are already finished. We have reporting, we have integration in continuous delivery pipelines. Everything is there. Everything that took me before between 2 months and 1.5 years. This is a test result. This is the representation that you give to Botium. More or less, Botium said to the conversational AI, hi bot, and it's a very dumb bot. It echoes just everything you tell him. The bot said, you said hi bot. Botium said, give me buttons, and it echoes some buttons, and here is also some NLP, NLU performance testing. So these intent buttons has a confidence of 0.8, which is pretty good. Yeah? And the same thing was there in this test set to get a picture. So compare this with, just imagine testing this conversational AI with Selenium, because this one is running in a website, setting all these things up, integrating, blah, blah, blah. It's a maniac. Yeah? And I wanted to show you how fast it is. Now I'm doing it again and give you some details and background. Yeah? So first step is connect to your chatbot, to your conversational AI. And before I just took a predefined bot, this dump echo bot. Now I'm showing you that you usually start with selecting your technology that you are using. And this is rock and roll. There is no other tool out there that supports this list of technologies. Yeah? So there's more or less everything there that is common, starting with Alexa Skill, Alexa Voice, Amazon Lex, BotKit of Microsoft, of course, BotCrest, there's the Facebook Messenger. We have generic connectors, Google Assistant, Dialogflow, IBM Watson, and so on, and so on, and so on. And usually, or not usually, usually customers find there what they need. But if there is a customer, for example, Flixbus develops their own conversational AI engine, yeah, this doesn't make us cry. We are very agile. We have 1 week sprints, and every 2 sprints we ship at least a minor release. Yeah? So if a customer comes to us, we have our own conversational AI, we need a connector. 1 week later he will get a new version with this connector included, and he will decide if it goes also out to the community edition, meaning for everyone out there. Also very important, I forgot to mention this. This open source Botium core framework is the one where you have to code everything on your own. This is the cool Botium box where everything can be done with a few clicks. And also of this thing, there is a completely free community edition. So in the last 15 years, my tech lead Florian and me, we were doing great stuff with Selenium and Appium, and we totally believe in this idea of open source and free software. And this is the reason why we made also Botium Box, the community edition, free. And of course, there are also some very expensive other editions. So you select your chatbot technology, and depending on what you select, you have to enter here credentials, yeah, and they are different for each technology. IBM Watson expects something else than Dialogflow in this case. I have no credentials here, so I take again my dump bot, and then there is a button say hello, and this is just more or less an acceptance test if the connection credentials are correct, meaning if you can talk to your bot. So this is the first step. Again, you can do this in 10 seconds also, like I did it before. Let's give it a name again. Second step, and this is also one very big learning of the last year. Remember the stories I told you about 300,000 support requests, 260,000 of them, meaning around about 85%, yeah, it's 85%, can be resolved to the same 5 intents and so on. We see this in each big domain. It's not only telecommunication. If you go to banking or finance, yeah, it's the same thing. There are 5 top intents, like what is my account balance and so on. Yeah, you go to the next domain, tourism. You go to customer support and so on. You go to easy stuff, like every chatbot needs to be able to do small talk. Yeah, so something like hi, how are you, whatever. And we saw that all our users were creating more or less the same test sets. At least this 85% are the same. Yeah, so every chatbot needs to be able to do small talk. So we said, what the fuck, we could provide this also and take away these efforts from you, because those guys working with Selenium and Appium know what the effort is. It's writing tests, maintaining them. Yeah, so we could go now to a big bank and say oh, you are in finance, then let's search here for banking, and you get out of the box 4 test sets with a few 100,000 conversations already inside. It doesn't cover everything. Of course, each bank has to add their own special products that they have. But the usual stuff, things like, what is my account balance, with thousands of different user examples, meaning asked in a lot of different ways, is already there. And of course, a banking chatbot should be also able to do small talk. And if you look here, the list of test sets in different languages is way much bigger. Yeah, and of course, you can combine all them. So we reached a situation where we can go into Flixbus and they are like, oh, this curious thing, we have heard about this in your presentation, can you show us this thing? And we would say, oh, you're in tourism. I add the tourism, I add the small talk. Before we were talking about the credentials. After 10 minutes, we click on start, and let's say 200,000 conversations are running against this bot. And we can tell something like, oh, your three competitors are able to answer these questions. Yeah? So these things are coming out of the box. We are enabling you to start really fast and quickly, and you just have to add minor things. Yeah? And to make some advertisement here for Source Labs again, let's take this WebDriver bot. The first stage where I was before testing on the API level, remember, testing conversational AI starts on API level. Here on this first stage, you could also go to user interface, meaning real devices, browser farms. We have your iOS core devices, Android core devices, and those are provided by Source Labs right now, for example. Yeah? So you would just select them, and all your tests would be executed on the 20 Android core devices that we have defined. Yeah? And of course, you can define them on your own. You can go here to Device Labs, register a new device set, select a provider. You could even connect your own local grid that you have running, yeah? Or take an existing one. What do we have here? Some Samsung phones, you just start typing and you get all the possibilities and so on. Yeah? So how am I in time? Do you want to stop me or should I go on? Oh, I could talk about this for days. Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Or what I could show you, because I just mentioned it, this would be what you see on Source Labs if you take these Android core devices, for example. Yeah, you have a device plot there and tests. I'm moving fast forward a little bit. So this is an Austrian telecom provider. Where we open the bot, where we talk to the bot. By the way, also this was something we learned from our community. The Botium core framework can talk to conversational AI, but in this case, the conversational AI is integrated in a mobile website. So how do you come from the website to the bot? Usually you have to click some buttons and on. So Botium is also using in the background Selenium and Appium. So we also solve these things. So those guys who register for our trial, and these things are all completely free, by the way, or download the free community edition. You will get every 2 weeks release notes, so I'm spamming a little bit. But the important thing is the header there. There's always a header that says our mission is continuous improvement. And this is what we do since 2 years permanently. Yeah. And this was one improvement to add here Selenium and Appium. Cool, questions?
So first, thank you for your presentation.
You're very welcome.
So you mentioned NLU. So I was just wondering what's NLU stand for?
Natural language understanding. I'm sorry for not saying this. So let's say the kid was natural language processing, and now the new shit is natural language understanding. Yeah, it's about resolving intents, finding weak intents, resolving intents to utterances. Yeah.
Is it kind of related to find semantic context similarities?
Yes,
somehow?
Semantics, linguistics. Yes, absolutely. You're on the right path. Yeah. Okay. So it's about. So the real basics are everything you say to a bot is an utterance or a user example. Yeah. I would like to know what is my account balance. All this is an utterance. Yeah? Out of this, to be able to give the right answer, and here natural language understanding and processing, semantics, linguistics come in, is to detect the intent that correlates to this utterance. Yeah? And the intent is get account balance. Yeah? So this is what the conversational AI needs to understand out of this utterance. And this is done by natural language processing and understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey. Oh, cool. Thank you.
Hi.
I'm wondering how you're starting to think about like appropriate social responses and even to a degree like a kind of like appropriate social personality for these, Because I'm hearing a lot about applications around like replacing like basic customer service skills, like the bank account info, right?
Yeah.
But when you actually look at customer service in a real life environment, if an agent sort of talks like a robot, it can actually leave some like not nice or not warm feelings from a customer. So I'm just wondering how you're starting, if you're starting to think about that and how you're kind of approaching it.
Yeah, yeah. So we're thinking a lot about this stuff. This could be another talk about the next year, what we are implementing. A lot of things are coming in there, and maybe I didn't talk, for example, about ethics. Yeah, this also comes in this direction because there was a slide with, you can say, 300 billion US dollar. Yeah, so all the big companies are, let's get fired, all these people and so on. So this is not what we see happening. Yeah? And this is not the idea of it. The fact is, imagine this customer support employee at this telecom company that has to answer every month 12,000 times the question, how can I quit my contract? Yeah? So you are ruining this guy or this woman. Yeah? Instead, the bot answers these 12,000, and this lady or this guy just has to answer 400 questions, and those are real tricky ones, and she or he could spend time there and so on. Yeah? This is one point. Meanwhile, I lost somehow your question.
Yeah, I guess the question is, so you're freeing up this individual to answer more complex questions, right?
Yes.
And that's providing value to the employee, and it's providing value to the business. But the business also cares about providing value to the customers, and the customers retaining themselves. And
Yes.
if they're going to interface more and more with chatbots like this, like, is that something you think is a concern as well as giving them kind of a warm experience?
Yeah, to be honest, what I see there, it's even going into direction of bots talking to bots in future. Yeah, something like, maybe you watched the last Google I/O. There they gave an example with how is it called, Google Home. Make me an appointment at my hairdresser. Yeah, where Google Home is then doing a phone call, and with no one can realize that a robot is speaking right now there, because the communication things are so good. There's things like the hairdresser says, "Oh, we don't have something at 11. Could you come later?" And the bot answers with something like, "Mm-hmm." So this is speaking. Yeah, this is linguistics and so on. I'm showing this video sometimes, and people are asking, so why shouldn't the hairdresser also replace the guy on the phone with a bot? Yeah, so this is a scenario that will come. Bots will talk to bots. Yeah, we will go more into this direction probably.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
Thank you for your presentation. I have one question regarding a data set. How do you collect a data set for conversation?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Or,
this is just
does anybody who develops it?
Yeah. I'm just rephrasing my mind. I'm wondering why this is only question number 3. Usually it's the first question. Yeah, where does the data come from? Because data is the gold of the 21st century. It's like that. Data is coming from, and because I'm expecting this question always, I have a slide for this. Where do data sets come from? First of all, out of our community. So there, we don't grab this data, but if someone likes to share, we take this data and put it in our data sets. It's coming from customers. It's this usual thing like when you're doing a phone call, are you fine when we are recording and using this to make our bot better? A lot of data is coming from chatbot providers. So these connectors that you saw, this big list with IBM and Google and so on, all of them have a little bit of out-of-the-box training and test data. Of course, they're all using completely different data models and so on. We have combined all of them. A lot of data is coming from public databases. So there are public databases out there where you get recorded phone calls. Yeah? We just transcript them to speech to text, make test sets out of it. From machine learning repositories, you can get a lot of data from the National Institute of Standards and Technology and out of statistics databases. This looks now pretty easy, but if you put all this data next to each other, you would say, how would you ever combine them in one data set? Because they look completely different. So there a lot of know-how went inside to migrate all this data in a format that could be used for testing and training conversational AI. But this is where it's coming from. And should I announce this? There will be in future also a marketplace for training data. So companies have the possibility, because right now if we ask our big customers, would you like to share your data set for our other customer, which is your biggest competitor? Guess what? Yeah, they are like, go out of here. But in future, imagine you are asking this in another way. For example, we have 300 other telecommunication companies and everyone would pay 500,000 euro for your test set. Then this question becomes different. Yeah? Then probably they want to share the data. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
I have a question regarding the product that you have explained. I mean, really liked it, the way you presented and about the understanding about Botium and other stuff. So I have a question like, basically machine learning or NLP does a lot of training and testing of data. And my question is, how different is Botium? Although you have explained, but I just want to have you say one-liner about how different is Botium solving the problem of handling conversational bots or being in machine learning stuff.
So for Botium, to be honest, it makes no difference. If the endpoint is an AI, a conversational AI endpoint, and an AI engine, an NLP or NLU engine, or a user interface or whatever. We are sending things, we are expecting things. That's it for us. For us, it's also no difference. This question is also there. What's the difference between testing and training? On Botium side, nothing. You, as an author of this bot, yeah, developing it in IBM Watson, you take the switch and say, now train me, please. Yeah? Then the bot will remember all the things that Botium sends to him. For us, it makes no difference. I'm always going too much into details, but there's a great example of, have you heard about Microsoft TIE? Someone maybe, yeah. So Microsoft is still the biggest software development company on the world, yeah, still. And I think it was last year, they announced their first major conversational AI, and it was called TIE. And it fits to the question of testing, training, machine learning, and so on. And they have put the switch to learn to always on. So this bot was taking everything that users told her as serious and learned from it. So after 2 days, guess what happened? TIE was racist, TIE was sexist, TIE was saying there was never a Holocaust. These are the very mean things, and after 2 days they took it offline, it disappeared, it was never back again. So also, is the camera off? Also Microsoft didn't test the conversational AI. And this is what I can't understand, yeah? They should have learned out of Windows ME or something, yeah? They should have learned, but they didn't. And I have this one picture, this is the funny thing that TIE did. If you asked her, what do you think is better, the Sony PlayStation or the Microsoft Xbox? TIE said, oh, I forgot the Xbox, it's shit, go for the PlayStation, better hardware, better games, and so on. So this is a funny example how you can ruin your product, yeah, but yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, you're welcome.